This video is sponsored by Filmora Video Editor and Film Stocks. Click the link down below to download Filmora for free. Stick around to the end of the video to see how they've helped support this channel. I think it's obvious that the PS5 reveal was, for the most part, everything that everyone had been asking for over the past, really, 8 to 10 months since we've known about the PlayStation 5's existence through both leaks and external official announcements. And honestly, it's kind of made that slow rolling build-up where everyone was wondering where are the games, where is the system, and why isn't Sony saying anything, kind of worth it. It's really hard to imagine them doing an event that went better than this. They showed off so much, and I'll get into the specifics of what they showed off, but there was really something here for everybody, and I think most importantly, while they skipped out on a few things that people probably needed to see, the rest of this was extremely well put together. I want to start though by giving Sony a bit of credit. Somewhere along the way during the PS4's life cycle, they decided that they didn't need a bunch of pomp and circumstance to their events. They didn't need a bunch of famous people or well-known game designers to come out onto a stage and say a bunch of words that really ultimately mean nothing. They didn't need to treat all of their events like the Academy Awards, nor did they need to treat them like a stand-up Comedy Central roast like we saw in the PS2 era at times, and especially during the PS3 era. So what they gave us was a really sleek, really fast-paced event with, yes, a few words here and there from developers and people like Shuhei, but for the most part, it was just games. Throughout the entire thing, Hitman would be revealed and some people from Iowa would come out and say a few things about Hitman, and that was it. Like 20 seconds of that, another stinger at the end. Shuhei would come out and talk about, well, this game's really exciting, and then a trailer would show. He's starting to look a little old, by the way. Kind of sad. But nowhere did this feel like a press conference like we used to know them as, or an E3 stage show. It really did just feel like Sony saying, hey, we have a bunch of stuff we want to talk about, but rather than sit here and talk about it, let's just show it to you, and we can start a dialogue in press releases over the next 2 months. We can have a conversation about specifics through slow rolling announcements throughout the year leading up to launch. Now, before we get into all of the great stuff, I do want to talk about something that I still find kind of odd. We are in June. There was no release date during the event, nor was there a price point. Now, the reason I think this is really simple. I think Sony potentially knows, well, I'm sure they do 100% know when Microsoft is launching the Xbox. These internal things tend to get out relatively early. And maybe their release date is earlier and they want to steal Microsoft's thunder by saying we're launching the PS5 2 weeks sooner. If I'm not mistaken, and if I'm remembering correctly, that's exactly what happened with the PS4, which is them launching a couple of weeks, or maybe it was 1 week before the Xbox One. But it is still strange to go through this entire hour-and-a-half video and not get the concrete things that everybody was looking for specifically. And the other negative has nothing to do with the PS5. I just want to say that if any of you were fooled by that 2K21 teaser trailer of Zion with more sweat, that's really the same teaser we've seen over and over and over again. They just add a bunch of sweat to a player model to make it look like it's more advanced than last year, but he looks the same as the sweaty guys from last year. And I say this as someone that absolutely loves basketball and is very disappointed by the way 2K has handled the series. But anyways, on to what I think was a lot of great things. I want to start by saying that Spider-Man 2 kind of had to be here. It's what everybody was expecting. It was here. It looks, from the very small amount of it we've gotten, incredible. And by the small amount, I mean it's a game starring Miles Morales. And if you don't know who Miles Morales is, he is a alternate version of Spider-Man, although by now you've probably seen Into the Spider-Verse. He's there, but for a while he was in a different offshoot of Marvel Comics known as Ultimate Comics. He's, in my opinion, the best Spider-Man. He's my favorite Spider-Man. So a game revolving around him in its entirety sounds exceptional. But I want to talk a little bit more about Insomniac, because Insomniac makes my personal, probably second favorite, third favorite maybe, game franchise of all time, and that is Ratchet and Clank. And that was probably one of the most surprising moments from this reveal. Throughout PS4's life cycle, we did not get a new Ratchet and Clank game. We got a Ratchet and Clank remaster, which was excellent and people bought, and that's how this new Ratchet and Clank game got made. I, for the life of me, did not expect to see a Ratchet and Clank game. Looks like it probably is a launch-ish title for the PS5. That's the last thing I expected to see, which was essentially a dormant franchise. The movie flopped, but man, does it look absolutely incredible. I know a lot of people were in the chat of the live stream saying things like, oh, why would they show this for the PS5? Let's show this for the PS5. I don't know if people were missing this or not, but the particle effects, the amount of destruction on screen, and most importantly, the amount of people and elemental effects they were able to put on screen at once. The Ratchet and Clank trailer was actually one of the few trailers we got real gameplay play for, and it was one of the few trailers that really showed off how big of a leap the PS5 to the PS4 is in a lot of ways. Sure, it looks on the surface a lot like Ratchet and Clank PS4, but the amount of stuff they're able to put to screen, the amount of realism is a weird word to use in a fantasy context, but you know, when you blow up a box, it blows up, and here it looks like it's blowing up. It looks shattered, splintered wood. If you were to shoot a weapon that were to basically combine every element of a star into one tiny little orb, condense that energy and release it, like the green weapon here looks like it's doing, that is what it would look like. It would spark, it would flare out, and that's really incredible stuff. It's really hard to do technologically with certain systems in hand. You couldn't do it on the PS3. You really couldn't do it all that much on the PS4, but what you're seeing here is, I think, a lot of the potential of the PS5. Sure, it's cartoony, but I don't think the potential of the PS5 necessarily lies always in realism. I think it lies in a lot of an expansion, if you will, of what's already possible on the PS4. 2K21 is a great example of this, and the 2K21 trailer, yes. Does it look marginally better than the PS4? Sure. Is that what the game is going to look like? Probably not. Is the game going to have a bunch of other problems? Probably. That's probably not where you're going to see a lot of the improvement, and you probably already know this if you're watching this video. You know about the SSD improvements, you know about the speed and loading improvements, and you're seeing that in Ratchet and Clank, by the way. Him being able to literally jump through these portals and go into entirely new environments with entirely new AI, entirely new NPCs, and a world that is being seamlessly loaded, it seems like, with very little load times. You do see a bit of that kind of corridor effect that you get in like a Tomb Raider game, where through the portal there's this moment where it's clear the game is loading in the new assets, but it's pretty incredible to watch. But I think the thing I want to talk about a little bit before we get into the biggest announcement and the bigger announcements and the system itself is, I was watching GameSpot's live stream, and in the chat you saw a lot of L's and why isn't this GTA 6 and who plays these games. There was such a wide breadth of genre and style and types of games that we saw here. We saw games that looked to be walking simulators, arcade games, co-op games. We saw a new Little Big Planet co-op adventure game. These are games that people play, believe it or not. And it's not you watching this video that are the people making those comments about why are these games exist, why do these indie games. I know it's not you guys, so this really isn't directed at anybody watching this video. It just more goes to show how hard it is for some of these indie games to break into the mainstream, how hard it is for some of the even AAA games to break into the mainstream when they're not these big God of War tentpole franchises. I mean, I saw a lot of the whole L post during the Destruction Derby type game, the Destruction League game, and that was a bit odd to me because, quite frankly, it looked a lot like really amped up Rocket League, which, by the way, no one cared about until suddenly it was a PlayStation Plus game and everybody cared, and suddenly the mainstream saw this game. I mean, it's just, judging a game based on a cinematic trailer is sometimes what these companies want you to do, but also a lesson I think gamers, if you can call anybody that, have learned. Games are better, sometimes worse than those showings, and it's just weird to see so many people outside of maybe this bubble or this echo chamber miss the fact that there are so many beautiful experiences that aren't GTA 6. But anyways, let's talk about the two biggest things here really quickly. The first is Horizon Zero Dawn 2. That is probably my most anticipated PS5 game. I platinumed Horizon Zero Dawn. I think it's exceptional in every single way. It is one of my favorite games of this generation, and most importantly, it's one of the most unique and idiosyncratic games of this generation. There's really nothing else like it, and sure, you could argue it borrows pieces from Uncharted and Skyrim, but it's really its own organism. It's this kind of beautiful, organic, open world game that feels lived in a way that a lot of open world games with regular humans don't. You know, this is a game where you have robotic dinosaurs, and it somehow feels more alive than a lot of open world games I've played this generation. And to see Horizon Zero Dawn 2 here was just, it was a great thing to see, but I also think importantly, it gives Sony this leverage to say, hey, we have these big tentpole franchises, they're coming, they're either coming right away or they're coming the following year, and the idea of what seemed to be underwater exploration, being on the way west coast in the ocean, seeing all sorts of new dinosaurs. I mean, it looks phenomenal. There's not much we can say about a game where we haven't seen much of the game yet, but it was nice to see. I also really liked seeing a new Resident Evil pop up. I thought it was really clever that they kind of revealed it within a reveal. So like an inception of a reveal, where you thought for a while that you were just getting a new horror game, you know, in the same vein as, I don't know, maybe an independent release or a smaller budget release from a AAA studio, something like an Outlast or maybe even an Until Dawn. And then that word village pops up at the end and it slowly turns into the Resident Evil typography, and you get that Resident Evil reveal. I thought that was really clever. Also, just more Resident Evil after Resident Evil 7 is good with me. I'm a little over the remakes personally. I really enjoyed the first of the 2 remakes and was not such a huge fan of the latter of the 2, but I'm incredibly excited for new original Resident Evil. But we're really here to talk about the system, which was finally revealed. Obviously, anybody that has any idea how these things work, when they saw the controller, they had an idea of what the system was going to look like. It was probably going to be white, at the very least, a dominantly white color. And it is, in my opinion, and I know there are going to be people that disagree. I saw people calling it a toaster or a air conditioner. I think it's beautiful. I really like the design. I think it's exactly what Sony wants to intimate and articulate with the architecture of the outside of the system, which is, this is the future. This is the future of gaming to Sony. This is, you know, the Jetsons of gaming, if you will. And that's really what it looks and feels like. It's got a curvature to it that feels very retro futuristic in design. It's got that beautiful traditional blue light that the PlayStation brand is now known for after this last generation, that kind of makes its way across both sides of the system, it looks like. And importantly, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are upset by the fact that it really doesn't look like it's a system designed to be on its side. I'm sure Sony will say you can put it on its side, but it really doesn't look like it's supposed to be, and the stand underneath it really makes it seem like it's not supposed to be. And that's well and good, that's fine, I guess. That's a different problem. I don't know where I'm going to put that system, which I guess is something I'd have to figure out. But in every single way, I think it's kind of external architecture, the way it's designed, its I guess curb appeal is beautiful. I also like the fact that if you look at the digital only system, which just kind of takes the disk drive out of it, which is unsurprising, I guess. I'll be curious to see what the difference of price is, if there even is that much of a difference of price. I'm not sure how much it costs Sony to include the disk drive at this point, but anyways, it is nice to see a design that's more symmetrical, the digital only one. That one in particular, I think looks just exceptional. I do like the white, even though I think it's gonna show dust really easily, but I also think that my PS4 does that as well. I think that there's this really symphonic look between both the PS5 controller and the PS5 itself that I actually don't think is super well articulated in the actual PS4. I think in the PS4 you're getting, I don't know, a more traditional, it's what you'd kind of expect out of a system design in 2013, just when that system launched. And same thing with the controller, it wasn't a huge departure from the PS3 controller, not just in terms of its physical design and the way it's held, but also in terms of its aesthetic design. It added the touchpad and the light bar, but other than that, it certainly looked like a DualShock 3. And this is not that. This is something very different, and I'm really excited about that. I'm at this point very curious about the price. I think that there's no stake that needs to be put in something like this, but I do think based on its design, it just feels like a $600 system. It looks like it's going to be priced at $600 or $599. I would be a little surprised, honestly, if it's not. You know, to build a PC that can run games on high, it probably will cost you, I think you can do it for $1,000 if you're really frugal, you build it yourself and you know what you're doing. And so I just wonder even how cheap, especially with proprietary architecture and proprietary materials and SSDs and things of that nature. I wonder how much they can drive that price down. If this thing is going to compete with a gaming PC, it's probably, I just wonder how much cost Sony is willing to eat on the purchase price, which is really the game that these distributors and these console makers play when it comes to consoles is, okay, how much can we lose? How much money can we lose or make sometimes? But that's rarer per system sale, right? How much of the cost can we eat per sale? Is it $30? Does it cost $530 to make and we're pricing it at $500? How much with each individual units does that cost benefit work out for us? So I don't know. My guess would be $600. My guess for a release is actually late October. I know November would be a more traditional way of thinking. I do think that Sony's interested in getting this thing out before the Xbox again, if for any other reason other than just take a little bit of hype and maybe get a few impatient consumer sales that maybe would have waited for the Xbox, or maybe people that would have bought both but spend the money on the PS5 and now don't want to spend the money on the Xbox. But we'll see. I think Microsoft is less concerned with the release date historically, so I don't know, but this is a good enough showing for me. I'm very excited what we saw. I'm finally super excited for this system. And now I want to know what you guys think. What do you think about the PS5 reveal? Did you like the games that were revealed? What were your favorite games that weren't called Horizon Zero Dawn or Spider-Man? What were you excited to see outside of those two games? What were your biggest surprises? And I think most importantly, what do you think the system is going to cost and when do you think it'll come out? I'm going to answer any of those questions down in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation. As always, if you enjoyed this video, click that like button down below. If you haven't yet done so, also hit subscribe. That way you won't miss anything I put out. And really quickly, as I mentioned before, this video was sponsored by Filmora. It is a super easy to use and tailor-made video editor for beginners. If you're just getting into YouTubing, if you're just getting into content creation, this is probably the video editor for you. I actually stumbled across it trying to help a friend get into YouTube. It supports video recorder, picture-in-picture, audio fine-tuning. Basically everything you need to really get started is included in Filmora. And that includes some of the effects work that you see in a lot of YouTube videos. Things like the pop video effects, the transitions, filters, and Filmora, some of which you're seeing right now. They'll help make early videos, especially the ones when you're just getting the hang of things a bit better and pop a bit more. Here you can see some of the options. There's quite a bit here. Now, a lot of these are presets, so really all you have to do is drag and drop these effects, these transitions, these filters onto whatever it is you're editing. And that's pretty much the extent of your work on the project when it comes to these things. Right now, what you're seeing is one video effect I really like, followed by one of my favorite sound effects and a transition. Back to back to back. And if I want to, I can throw a single filter over all of that and really make Filmora do a lot of the work for me. Honestly, this is kind of a program that I wish I had when I first started, just so I could figure out what my style of video making is before things got a bit more complicated and a lot harder. So down below, you can find a link in the description for a free download of Filmora. Again, if you want to start creating content, if you're just trying to get a hang of things, or just trying to find out if video editing is something you're even interested in, this is a great way to do it. You can click the link in the description, download Filmora, and give those things a shot. Yes, guys, by the way, I am back. I took a little bit of hiatus. Uploads will be a bit slower for a while, but I am back. And until next time, guys, I'm out.